Hey, what's up, guys? So yesterday I just finished watching the Dark Side of the Ring Chris Benoit documentary, and I thought I would share my opinions and my thoughts on the whole thing. It's a little bit controversial, maybe for some. I know there are very conflicting ideas of what should be done and what how to take this crazy tragic scenario. Obviously, at the end of the day, three people are dead because of this, and Nancy and Daniel were very much victims and should be honored and remembered with the utmost of respect, especially in a very emotional case like this, and how this all tragically happened. There was talks afterwards of Nancy being inducted into Hall of Fame. I am 100%, 110% on board with that. I never followed Nancy's career. I've only seen little snippets of her managing Ric Flair, I believe. So to go and see some of the history of what she accomplished and how much of a trailblazer she was for women's managers, for valets, was awesome, and a fresh perspective on her that I never really had. Now about Daniel, I mean, that's it's just it's so sad. I couldn't even imagine my daughter being taken away like that. Never mind, me committing an act like that, all because of pro wrestling, which people get very tied up and passionate about. Obviously, as you can see in the documentary, like this was Chris and Eddie's passions. And if you saw my tweet earlier that I put out, these two guys were just driven so much. They were so invested in it, and they wanted to be the absolute best, and they were, but they weren't recognized for it. And there's always that push-pull dynamic of creative with talent, or with management and talent, always butting heads on ideologies and philosophies about pro wrestling, and who should be pushed and who should be your stars and what is good wrestling. Even the fans, you see them debating these kind of topics all the time. So as a performer, when deep in your heart and deep in your head, you fully believe that you are the absolute best and deserve more than what you are given, I very much see how mentally frustrating that can be for an individual. And this video isn't to justify anybody's actions whatsoever. So please hang on for me here and just bear with me. Chris really was great in the ring. I remember following his career as early as 1996, seeing some stuff with him and Chris Jericho, some of their matches from Japan and such, and he always captivated me. His in-ring style was so much more physical. It was so much more believable than some of the performances you would see in WWF at the time with, say, Shawn Michaels and such. And even when you compare it to today's product with the WWE product, the WWE and AEW are very much performance-based. They don't feel like a fight. But Chris Benoit brought this level of physicality that made it feel very much like a fight. It looked like he was hurting the guys more than anyone else was. It looked like he brought a level of precision and accuracy and viciousness to his style and to the product itself, and it really made him stand out from a lot of people, even in WCW. And I'll remember his matches with Booker T all the time, his matches with Jericho, his matches with Eddie, stuff like that. When he got to WWE, he immediately became a star despite his lack of charisma. A lot of people would say he was very robotic, and even Jericho would highlight that, making fun of him sometimes in their rivalry. But it was that edginess and that no-nonsense attitude of his that he brought in his wrestling character that really, again, just drew something to himself. And the excitement of the crossface and the out-of-nowhere aspect of it, he could literally tie that in at a moment's notice, really made him a star. And he eventually got there, of course. WrestleMania 20, everyone's seen it. The world's seen it. Everyone was chomping at the bit to see him finally get that opportunity, and he was given it. But not for very long. He had the world title. He was kind of pushed as the guy a little bit. He was just one of those champions, though, that kind of remained a little bit in the background. Like, there was always bigger business to attend to, and this championship was just given to him sort of to hopefully bring him up a level. And when he lost the belt, of course, he went back to the mid-card and upper mid-card region. And again, as a talent who works their entire life to try to be acknowledged and respected as the best when they feel deep down that they are, and that they bring something important to the product, and they're not treated as such, that again can be very frustrating. And hearing it back in that documentary, you know, you're on the road for 300 and some days out of the year. It's your world. Like, you literally work every day to try to be the best, because it does create bigger opportunities. It means more money. It means more recognition. It means more merchandise sales. It means a better future for yourself. So when you are the best, or you perceive yourself as the best, and you're not getting recognized as such, and instead they're using you to try to enhance this new young talent, even if they don't have it, but it's just their agenda for that time, I can very much see that being a point of frustration in your life. Never mind that, but the frustration of being away from your family and wanting to be there for moments. And according to the documentary and people's recollections of events, he wanted to be there for his family. He wanted to be there for those important moments. And he was missing all of this. And being away from each other can be very much a huge strain on a relationship. And the one major factor, and I don't think people who don't partake in wrestling really understand the gravity of the importance of the brain damage that does occur through pro wrestling in a very physical style like Chris had. Chris used his head in a lot of scenarios, not just the diving headbutt, but the dive to the floor, the suplexes, all of it, the chair shots. He brought it, and his opponents brought it with him in that scenario, and it did cause a lot of brain damage, to the point where, as they mentioned in the documentary, it looked as if his brain was rotting from the inside out. And when certain wires, certain nerves within your brain start breaking down like that, and I've watched documentaries covering CTEs and things like that, and really it's helped me understand how I should act as a performer to preserve my body and myself and my future. Chris wasn't Chris anymore. Like, Chris Benoit wasn't the same person, because his brain wasn't processing some of the ability to make certain decisions that he would make normally. And I think that's why it's so hard to process why he did what he did over that weekend, is that it wasn't him, or it was this impulsive, the first one anyways, was very much an impulsive act that wasn't by his own account. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am totally wrong on this, but I believe, based off what I've heard and what I know about brain injuries and such, that, you know, there was a part of his brain, and with all this added stress and frustration, that there was a moment where he wasn't thinking, and an accident happened, or something else just took over and caused a very bad result. And because of that, not knowing what to do, and you could never really put yourself in the shoes after that scenario, like if it was an accident, but the choices you want to make, the you know, it's very difficult to wrap your head around what anyone would do in that scenario. And unfortunately, Chris chose to take also his son's life, and then obviously not being able to live with himself and making the choice to end his own. It's just such a bad scenario, and it's unfortunate that it happened. And JR mentioned never inducting him into the Hall of Fame, and we heard Nancy's sister mention how she may be able to forgive him one day, but today wouldn't be that day, and I don't blame her at all. And a lot of people immediately are quick to write Chris off, and rightfully so. What he did was disgusting, and the act itself is unforgivable. But I think in a way, it's important to see that maybe the act wasn't on his own account, and there will always be that debate, because we don't have anything to prove what actually happened visually that weekend. We can piece together evidence and stuff. The detectives and all that did that work, but I don't believe that Chris chose that first one. He might have made the choice in the second one to maybe protect his son from a world of hurt, and then of course his own. I think looking back, and it's going to take a lot of time, and it's unfortunate that it had to be this way, but I think looking back, this event helped, and it almost killed it, but I think in a way it very much helped the wrestling business. I think it helped sports in general, and I think it helped save possibly hundreds of lives, because what we learned from that scenario and what we still continue to learn about CTEs, about brains in sports, and about mental health, it's light years ahead of where it was at that time when the murders took place. And if anything, from all of this, Chris was obviously dealing with that brain damage that I discussed, with a lot of mental health issues. Eddie passing away was massive for him. The strains of being on the road for that many days a year, working that much with that style of wrestling, put a mental and physical toll on his body, and mentally was very distraught, and being away from his family so much and missing out so much of his family's lives really put a mental strain on him. And I think there is a learning curve there to not repeat these same mistakes, to not create more possibilities for this to happen in the future. And I hope, I swear that this is going to change the wrestling business for the better. I hope that this story continues to be told and continues to be learned from, to protect the wrestlers, to protect their families, to protect anybody in sports, to protect people in any sort of situations where their brain gets shaken around. I know for a fact, and this kind of stuff scares me as a wrestler, I know when I've been thrown around a little harder than usual, I have the next day a harder time remembering things short term. So, like, say I'm working at a restaurant, my customers are giving me an order. Usually I can do it without writing it, but on the days after a show where I'm whipped around a little more, I do need to write those down. Otherwise I will forget things. So that just goes to show, and that's just one match. You imagine doing 5 of those a week. It takes its toll, and that's just short-term results, never mind long-term. So those are things to consider, and I think that should be Chris's legacy, is that this person suffered a lot. And again, not justifying what he did. What he did, as I said, was disgusting and unforgivable. But I think there are some massive lessons that change our worlds for the better because of a tragedy like this. And in moments like this, we learn, just like we did in 9/11, just like we did with the Titanic, sinking, and all those people lost. I think this is one of those tragedies where we learn a lot from, unfortunately. And I think, if anything, that should be Chris's legacy. He found his passion, and he worked at it so hard, and he wanted to do so much better for his family. He wanted to get to a certain tier of success and be acknowledged for it, so that he could be content with his body of work that he sacrificed his entire life for, so that he could go home fulfilled and happy and proud, and hopefully have something that he could share with his family as a sense of pride and respect, and lessons of sacrifices paying off, and hard work getting his dues, and he just didn't get it. And so I think having conversations with family and friends, not secluding yourself, is important. I think those journals, and I would love to read those journals. I think those journals were an important insight into his headspace a little bit. Write down discuss, have those conversations, include people into what's going on. If you have any concerns or worries, go seek professional help, because it could make all the difference in your world, in your family's world, and the world of those around you. That pretty much covers my opinion on it. Do I think Chris deserves to go into the WWE Hall of Fame one point? Not yet, but retroactively looking back, in 20, 30 years, maybe, for the reasons that I listed. It's just going to take time, and it's going to take awareness and conversation that we're still having very much so today, and to see what kind of impact that moment had on the world of sports and what his body of work contributed to in all of this. So I that's my opinions on everything, and it's okay to disagree with me. I just thought I would put it out there and give a different perspective that maybe a lot of you aren't looking at. So hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't checked it out, I really recommend you guys checking out the entire series, Dark Side of the Ring. This is season 2. They have a season 1. Go back and watch it. It is great stuff. These guys do their homework and really cover a whole lot of ground on both sides of the coin, and don't try to control their own narrative in it. Really worth checking out, guys. So thanks. Till next time. Appreciate you guys always watching and supporting. You know how to do it. Hit me up on Twitter at I am Jay Walker, guys. We'll see ya. Thanks for watching.